Hello and welcome to this video on multiplying fractions. Now what people usually find difficult with fractions is remembering which rule to apply where. So in each of these videos on fractions I'm trying to help you understand where the rules come from. So let's have a look at this first example to see where the rule for multiplying fractions comes from. So example 1 says 1/2 multiplied by 1/2. Another way of thinking about this is saying 1/2 of 1/2, because multiplication means of. So a half of a half. So you can see in the diagram up here, I have shaded in blue half of it. But what happens if I want a half of that half? So half is shaded in blue. What happens if I want half of that half? Well, I can just do this. I can halve it. And what am I left with? Well, I'm left with, out of my whole diagram, 1/4. So I'm going to put it's equal to 1/4. Hopefully you can see that blue square up there takes up 1/4 of that diagram. I'll just take it out of the way just so you can see it another way. So there was my 1/2 to begin with that I've written across. I've written across the whole 1/2. And then I've found 1/2 of that half to leave me with the grey box, which is 1/4 of this full bar here. So what's going on here? Well, I can see that I've just got 1 on the top. Where have I got that from? Well, there's 1s here, and I've got 1 there. So not quite sure what's gone on there yet, but let's have a look at the bottom. I've got a 2 and a 2, and I've got a 4. So it looks to me like I have multiplied the 2 and the 2 to get 4. Is the same true of the top? Well, let's go back. 1 multiplied by 1, yeah, it gives me 1. Okay, let's see if this rule works in another example. Here, I've got 1/3 multiplied by 1/2. Well, here I have 1/2 of my diagram coloured in blue. But what happens if I want 1/3 of that half? So 1/3 of that half, well there's my half. I want 1/3 of it, and remember 1/3 means divide by 3. So what does that give me? Well, it gives me 1/6 of that whole diagram. Because there are 6 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I've got 1 of them. I'll just take that out of the way so you can see it again. So if I want 1/3 of my half, well there was my half to begin with, the top half, and I want 1/3 of it, and it just leaves me with that square there, which is 1/6. So have I multiplied across the top and multiplied across the bottom? Let's check. Well, 1 times 1 is 1, yeah, and 3 times by 2 is 6. Yes, I seem to have multiplied across the top and multiplied across the bottom. Let's see if it works in another example. Here, I've got 1/4 multiplied by 1/3. So I've got 1/3 of my diagram here, shaded in blue, but I want 1/4 of it. So let's divide it by 4 to give me 1/4. Let's go this way. And I get 1/12. So I started out with 1/3 of my diagram there, because if I think about it, that's 1/3, that's the second third, that's the third third. So 1/3, I wanted 1/4 of it. So you divide by 4, and you find that it is 1/12 of that diagram. Because look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's 12 pieces, and I've got 1 of them. Just take that out of the way, just so you can see it. So there was my 1/3, and I'm finding 1/4 of it, which leaves me with 1/12. And this example. Here I have got 1/5 of my diagram, because that's 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/5. But I want half of it. So if I halve it, what am I left with? I am left with 1/10 of my whole diagram. So yes, it seems that the rule is if you're multiplying fractions, you multiply the top numbers and you multiply the bottom numbers, making it, I think, the easiest fraction rule to remember. When you're multiplying fractions, you multiply across the top and you multiply across the bottom. Nice and straightforward. Multiply the numerators to get your numerator for your answer, and multiply across the denominators to get the denominator of your answer. So let's look at a different example. So we know the rule now is multiply the numerators, so 3 multiplied by 5 is 15, and multiply the denominators. 4 multiplied by 6 is 24. And if you're asked for your answer in its simplest form, you should simplify through by the highest common factor, which in this case is 3, and you'd get 5/8. If you want a bit more on simplifying fractions, watch the video on simplifying fractions. Example number 6, so again we are multiplying across the numerators. 8 times 4 is 32. And multiply across the denominators. 11 times 5 is 55. And that cannot be simplified because 32 and 55 do not have any common factors apart from the number 1. So it will not be simplified any further than that. Example number 7, 7 times by 3 is 21, and 12 multiplied by 7 is 84. But I'm actually going to do something slightly different here. I'm going to what is called cancel common factors. So here I can see there's a 7 here, and there's a 7 here. So if I divide those both by 7, I get 1. And that just makes my multiplying a little bit easier. So now I can just do 1 multiplied by 3, which gives me 3. And I can do 12 multiplied by 1, which gives me 12. And then I can just simplify that to 1/4. I could also have cancelled a common factor here as well and made that 1, and 3's into 12 go 4 times there. I could also have done that way. Okay, what about this one? Well, instead of doing 20 multiplied by 11, I'm going to try and make this easier for myself. I can see that 4 will go into both of these numbers. So 4 goes into 8 twice, and 4 goes into 25 times. And that just makes it a little bit nicer for me. So now I can just do 7 times by 2, which is 14. And 5 multiplied by 11 is 55. And that won't simplify any further because there are no common factors between 14 and 55 apart from 1. Okay, example number 9. Okay, 18 multiplied by 3, 20 multiplied by 54. Can I make this any easier for myself? Yes, I think so, because 9 is a common factor. So 9 goes into 18 twice. And 9 goes into 54 6 times. And in actual fact, that because I can see a 2 and a 3 there, I think I've not actually divided through by the highest common factor. The highest common factor there is actually 18 itself. So if I divide 18 by 18, I get 1. If I divide 54 by 18, 18 actually goes into 54 3 times. So I get 3 on the bottom there. So 1 times by 3 for the numerators is 3. And 20 multiplied by 3 is 60. And in actual fact, they have got a common factor. So 3 goes into 3 once, and 3 goes into 60 20 times. So 1/20. Example 10. 1 3/5 multiplied by 6/7. Okay, so what should we do here? If we're presented with a mixed number, I strongly recommend you convert it into an improper fraction first. There is a video on changing between improper fractions and mixed numbers if you want a reminder of those. Go and watch that now. 1 3/5 is, well, there's 5/5 in one cake, so there are 8/5 in 1 3/5, and multiply by 6/7. And if I multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom, 8 times 6 is 48, and 5 times 7 is 35, and I can see I've got an improper fraction there, which is going to be 1 and 13 35ths. Example 11, I've got two mixed numbers here, so I recommend you convert them. So that is going to be 7/4 multiplied by 7/3. 7 7s are 49. 4 3s are 12, making that 4 wholes and 1/12 left over. Okay, here are some questions for you to have a go at yourself. So pause the video now, have a go at these, and then start the video to see the answers. And here are the answers. Very well done for having a go at those.